Good afternoon. Welcome to episode number 3 of My First Job. We've met interesting people in the last couple of episodes. They were from the corporate field. And now, this time, we will be meeting Lalita Iyer, who has over 3 decades of experience as a journalist. I'm not going to introduce Lalita in great detail because we will be traversing the path that she has taken. But just a couple of announcements. One is that please put all your comments into the Facebook, into the YouTube, sorry, not Facebook, into the YouTube comments so that when we find something interesting that the speaker can respond to, we'll try and put it up. The second thing is that we will be taking this through a series of the stages that she has passed through, right from the time she decided that she would be a journalist. Let me bring Lalita on board. Good afternoon, Lalita.
Hi there.
Welcome to My First Job, and it's great to have you on the show. And
Thank you.
thank you for assenting. So let's dive right in. So, why don't we start with, you know, when did you know you wanted to be a journalist? Just a little aside here, you said that you won a debate competition where you got a 1 year internship at the Times of India, and you didn't enjoy being a reporter as much as you enjoyed being at the desk. So, why don't we go straight back to that early stage and
Sure.
then discover how it played out later?
It's ironic that now I like to be a reporter, and I think I'm on the wrong side of the mic. I'm feeling a little uncomfortable and never been on this side of the mic. But having said that, the Times of India experience was fantastic in the sense everyone's very kind, extremely, uh, gentle and so on. But they sent me on some foreign beat about some South Asian nation talk or some such. I didn't understand a word of it, and that
Okay.
time I was way too fresh in it. I didn't know I had to do homework, so I was kind of lost and out at sea. And the next reporting assignment was a cricket match, and
Okay.
I'm not extremely fond of cricket. Many people will hate me for it, so these two assignments really kind of, gave me a feeling that I might not be good at it, and I continued to do little assignments, but I was not very happy. When I went on the
Okay.
desk, I got my first headline, and there were little claps and things like that.
Yeah.
So that encouraged me. So I
Okay.
really enjoyed my stint there. That was my
Okay.
first
The
ever
audio,
experience
it
with
got a
cricket.
little this thing in between. I don't know if you need to speak a little louder or it
Sure.
is. Yeah.
My mic is at full. Yeah.
Yeah. That's fine. Okay. So why don't you then let's go back to school and what are the various things, career options that you considered or college at that point?
There was really not too much because those days, if you did MA literature, it was either you become a lecturer and get into journalism was never an option really. You become a lecturer because I had a cousin who was a lecturer and she was quite the idol. The other was my mother wanted me to join the bank for various other
Okay.
reasons, but I never appeared for the exams. So till quite some time, she didn't really accept the fact that journalism was a field. She says you should have joined the bank. Why did you join journalism? But yeah, but those
There
were
are always
exciting
things that
times.
parents themselves want to do and hope that their children will
Seriously,
fulfill.
seriously. Mom was a teacher though, so she would have
Okay.
maybe liked me to be a lecturer.
Okay.
But after the Times of India stint, all other options just kind of naturally turned off, and I turned towards journalism, and I liked
And
it.
did you do a lot of writing when you were in school and college?
Um, uh, I was a very good student. I mean, an
Okay.
extremely good student. So yes, you had to write papers for MA and stuff like that. Teachers would look up to me for presentations and things like that. I stood third in the university, which is not saying much, but
No,
for
but still,
literature.
yeah.
So yes,
Okay.
I was a writer, but I used to write poetry as a little hobby or something, but nothing great. I mean, I would have never ever imagined me getting into journalism. Never.
Okay. So what exactly happened? Why don't you take us through what were the
So
steps
I
that
was doing
led
the
up
stint
to?
in Times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a little hang. I did my stint in Times of India, and um, then I decided to go to Bombay to do a film course, which was an evening course at St. Xavier's College,
Film course.
and film course. And
Okay.
you wouldn't believe it, I wanted to do animation. That was
Okay.
another favorite because I liked Tom and Jerry. So I
Okay.
thought animation was the way out. I could watch it every day and so on.
Okay.
How stupid I was. But I applied for a couple of universities, didn't get it. Then I went to do this film course, which was an evening course. Now, I had to pay, for the hostel and things like that. And there was no money. I had just paid the fees. So at that time, there was this offer for working at Body and Beauty Care. I don't know if
Okay.
you guys remember it, but this was the Upside Down magazine, Dr. Padam Singhvi's. Body was
I
one side,
remember
and
the
the other
upside
side
down
would be
magazine thing.
upside
Okay.
down. Yeah, body would be
Yeah.
this side, and when you turned, beauty would be on the other side. So all stuff
What
beauty
was the
on one.
logic there?
He just thought it was unique. It did very well
Okay.
for some time. Sheer curiosity
Okay.
value. I did
Okay.
a lot of good work there. I mean, lot of interviews and lot of good work. I didn't know a thing about beauty, but it was interesting, and didn't know a thing about medicine. But you kind of met people, and then you realize journalism is all about homework and getting to like the subject as you go. If
Okay.
you're good enough, you do your homework when you're meeting a good doctor. You need to know what neurosurgery is about, and then you go and talk to him. So that was learnt on the job, that when
So how would you prepare for these interviews?
for any, even till for the Week magazine, if I had to interview a business person, I would read up everything that was on him, everything, and
Okay.
then write out my questions, and
Okay.
you know talk to a couple of people if I knew them, and that is homework, that is
So what did you
required.
find had changed about the interviews? Was it easier to get people to talk? What changed over time?
See, I'm this side of the mic, but honestly, if I had interviewed you, you'd have loved it. So I am very comfortable talking with people,
Okay.
and that is a requirement. The requirement of
Okay.
a good journalist is to be friendly, to be able to listen even as you
Right.
ask questions, and
Right.
button. No, I use the word very loosely. Button at the right time, and
Right.
get back to the person so that you get insights. But that
And
is
then how
typically
would you
learnt on the job.
translate this into a report later? Let's say you want to write an article, you make notes. There
Yeah.
is a process. But I
Yes.
think there is always this whole thing of I make a note, I remember parts of the conversation, but
Yeah.
getting all that together in a form that
Yeah.
flows is a
Yeah.
job.
I think most journalists, if you if you talk to them, they will say it's the intro, the first few lines that you need. The moment that falls into place, everything else falls into place. And typically in an interview, you would introduce the person. So it depends on how well you know the person. Whereas if it's a report, it political report, it would be something else. You talk about the politics of the region. If it was nationalism, you talk about a little bit about history. So given the situation, you change your intro, but the first few lines, and you're on it after that, because you've done enough work already. Yeah.
Okay. So, can you take us through? I'm going a little in detail because I'm saying
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
your first job.
Yeah.
So, I'm trying to break it down to try and figure out, okay, because a lot of people, one of the problems that I've found is that people who get into a job don't know what they're letting themselves in for.
Yes.
They learn on the job, but to a large
Yes.
extent, they are unaware of what they're going to be walking into or what the early stages of the job will be. So from
Yes.
someone, and
Yeah.
at that stage, going through it at that stage is hard to analyze. You can do it later, but I think your experience will be invaluable on that. So, okay, you
No,
finish the interview, come back, and then you start writing. So, how long would
see,
this process take?
no. Typically, no, oh, if you're in a newspaper, it is like you don't even get an hour, depending on
Okay,
when you finish it, right? If you're for a
okay,
week, for a person who was for 23 years in the Week magazine, it mine was a relaxed job because I could finish reporting and send the report after 48 hours, and then they'd
okay,
carry the story after 3 weeks, so I could work on it. So that was not an issue. But if you're a newspaper person, your report has to be immediate, almost
okay,
practically. If there is a press
okay,
conference happening at 5:30, sometimes there's an embargo, but sometimes they say report it immediately. So you would
okay,
have to do it within. If you have to go for the first edition, it would have been it should be closed by 8 p.m. If it is the second edition, then you're allowed to 11 p.m. and so on. It is a knack to write a report. It is because you're already prepared when you're on the job. You're preparing your intro, when and of course you discuss with the other colleagues and say, hey, shall we all take this lead? You really don't want to go wrong there, right? Because all the other newspapers are taking another lead and
yeah,
you go on another lead, so there is a lot of friendship happening there, and you kind of say we'll take the same lead. And then it depends on how well you report it, whether your report stands out or the others. But by and large, the leads are much discussed
okay.
that way.
So, after
Also,
your
when
stint at this at the
during
beauty
our
magazine,
time, we didn't have many idols. We didn't have many idols. But now, after television has come, there are a lot of people looking to that and thinking there's immediate publicity, there's immediate thing happening, or you'll become very popular. We didn't have this. We had print. So there was a lot of mulling around. Now it is, visual. You can see the person, you can take a lead on that, and you say, okay, if I come on stage like this, I'll become popular. So there is a lot to think about that in terms of coverage. And yeah.
yeah. So, you've actually spanned three massive changes. You started from press, you saw the change into television, and from television into digital.
Yes,
Right.
yes,
So
yes.
working in a okay, so why don't we go this at this step by step? Then you said news time. What is the next? You started working at an Inadu
The
sister
week.
publication.
Yeah,
The
sister publication,
okay,
News Time, for 5 years. I was
okay,
even as a, but here I must tell you a couple of anecdotes, because it's very exciting times then. I was working on the magazine section, which would come every Sunday, and I had a lot of people reporting for me and all. And I had a little column called Lolly Didi column. I would write a little column for kids on a comic page, extremely popular. Everybody really got extremely envious because a lot of letters were coming in and all.
okay.
Then one fine day, when someone said, "Oh, but Lalita, you're working on the magazine. You're not
Huh.
on the mainstream." So I went to the boss and said, "Put me mainstream." So he made me
Okay.
business. He asked me to write stories on business people. Then everyone said, "Oh, but you're on the business side. You're still not mainstream, right? You're not covering politics." So I went and told him, "Boss, I need to do politics because I'm sick and tired." You wouldn't believe it. It was election time. I was standing there 5:30. I went and complained to him. 6:30, he said, "Book your ticket. You're going to Patna to cover Bihar politics." And I was like, "Oh my God, seriously?" I mean, I was shocked beyond wits, but I had a fantastic time covering it.
Okay.
And I had a coup because I could interview Lalu Prasad Yadav, and it was carried in a very big way on the op-ed page. So I had a lot of stories then and stuff like that. So
So what is
that's
it like actually being, at the questioning end of these extremely popular politicians? What is the experience like? Do they give you time? Do they, okay, you might have to wait depending on their schedule, but what is it like interacting with them?
quite often very nice, most
Okay,
often, in fact. And incidentally, I was Chandrababu Naidu's blue-eyed girl, one of the persons
okay,
who got appointments quite often. But
okay,
including him, election time, when they are campaigning, if you're not on the campaign with them, they can make you wait long. So I did an interview with him at 3 a.m. in the morning once, and I was waiting in an AC comfort and, dinner and coffee and stuff like that. They make you wait. They make you wait a lot. And this
okay,
is where you learn your patience. And if you think you're getting a scoop, or if you think the interview is very important, you wait. But for a
Okay.
daily reporter, that's, it depends if he needs to get the interview or not. So depending on if you're for working for a newspaper or for a magazine, you decide.
Okay.
But by and large, politicians are nice. They are not rude. They have not been rude to me, especially.
Right. No, and I've heard this from somebody who used to work at Business India, saying that far better than advertising, I think politicians are great communicators
Yes,
because they are amazingly good at
they are.
explaining things. They are very good
Exactly.
at simplifying things. You can
Yes,
also say that they're very good at manipulating, but then the whole point is that they've got a point of view and
absolutely.
they want to ensure that it. But have you found that it's true across most politicians that you met that they are very clear about their concepts, they about what they want to tell you?
Yes, they are, because they want your vote, right?
Right.
So whether you are an English journalist or not, but having said that, if again I'm bringing back Chandrababu Naidu. Thanks to Babu, thanks to Naidu Garu, politicians became savvy. They understood what was local coverage and what was national coverage. So when they spoke with us, they spoke with a little more difference because they knew the audience was wider. Earlier, that was not there, right? It was quite localized, and they would probably not talk English. They would speak the local language and stuff like that. But somehow I have a feeling with Naidu, things changed a little in terms of political aspects. So, and in terms of news awareness also, they began to realize television also coming full force at that time. So they began to realize that local news is something else, and this was. So when you're talking to a seasoned politician who's been in Delhi for some time, he is extremely smart. He will speak extremely well with you, and totally take you astray from the question you asked him, but still speak so well. So you kind of have to bring him back.
Yeah. So you
That's
have
why
to
both
bring
of
it back.
them.
Yeah,
Yes,
sometimes you don't even realize they're countering you or taking you in the other direction.
absolutely. Yeah, take you somewhere else, and then you have to tell him sorry, but come back.
Okay.
These are at individual on a one-on-one level. Sometimes at a press conference, you get enough information from the questions being asked, so you kind of cover
Okay.
that and so on.
But were you at any point thinking, like you said, okay, you got into journalism, it had already been 5 6 years since you spent.
Yeah,
Did you ever have any thoughts about saying, should I explore something else which is related to writing, or life was so interesting that you didn't really have the time to think of?
absolutely. Life was too interesting, and I
Okay.
got two offers for television, but I was not keen because somehow I relish the fact that I can work on a story rather than uh, much though it's nice and for immediacy. I prefer to really do a little homework, sit back on it, dwell upon it, and write. And so I preferred print. You now people might call it a bit lazy, but it wasn't. It was just that you could add that much more information, and so I refused the TV jobs. And now, fairly late in life, I'm thinking of films
Okay.
now.
No, but
Okay,
it's great that you're still looking at this whole thing and saying, okay, there are new dimensions that you'd like to explore.
there are. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes,
So when you find you've obviously seen whole new generations of reporters come in. So one of the things which you mentioned early on is that the newcomers probably want to be on TV much earlier, and they understand that TV can be a ticket to far better, what do you say, visibility and
yes.
possibly career advancement early on. But what do you think are some of the things that people should be keep in mind? What are the things that they should watch out for, and what are the things that they need to develop once they're in the business?
I think ultimately, even in journalism, as in any other field, it's hard work. right?
Okay.
You have to be at it. And quite often in local media, in regional media especially, when a woman comes into journalism or something, she's sent to women and child welfare invariably for some
Okay.
reason, right? The
Okay.
woman, I just tell girls, take it up. You can do some phenomenally interesting stories. And it is over a period of time that these kind of stories have really hit home. And the people, they're like Better India and a couple of other people who are focusing on these kind of stories. So there is journalism out there which talks of developmental studies, which talks of women, which talks of welfare issues and things like that. But like I said, every youngster, girl or boy, they think politics is it. When you talk of journalism, they think they need to do politics. Whereas I think politics is, the guy moves away after 5 years and he will make some stupid policy decision, doesn't matter. You need to be where people are happy, where people have had an impact. Somebody else has done some work. So there's a lot of course, many people will differ with me on this, but I think when a youngster gets into television also, they must think much beyond politics, is what I think. There's a huge world out there. There's entertainment, there's development, there's rural welfare, and there is all kinds of things. So in our time there was Naxalism. Now unfortunately it's not there. Oops, it's kind of slowly. I cannot say unfortunate, but it's kind of ebbing. But those are exciting moments because you knew the
Okay.
police, you knew the Naxals, and you could cover that and you could give your perspective. I mean, fantastic times. Seriously.
So tell me, what is it like to get two completely different points of view? For example, when you meet the Naxals and you talk to them, you get one point of view, and then when you talk to the police, you get the exact opposite point of view.
Yeah.
So in your mind, how are you reconciling these two truths, but seen from a completely different perspective?
Benu, at heart, I think all of us, I mean, we are all leftists at a certain level.
Okay.
Okay, I mean, so deep inside, what the guy is doing is right. There is a vigilante in all of us, right, at a
Okay.
certain level. But having said that, when you after you meet the Naxal, you kind of yeah, the police were very friendly, of course, but they kind of become wary of you. They say, you went and met them, you spent time with them, so you know what is the use? Why should we tell you anything? But having said that, in Andhra Pradesh, there was a lot of activity, proactive kind of work towards the Naxals. I mean, YSR did that, and therefore it took this path where you know uh, they had to surrender arms and things like that. But we've had some tremendous police officers who've done fantastic work with Naxals. And we've had several activists who've done phenomenal work with Naxals,
Okay.
going to the villages and doing grassroots level work. So both the aspects, but depends on you. You never write one story, you write several stories. So you get the Naxal point of view and then you get the police point of view.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's
That's the only way of getting out of it.
it's almost as if you get both. You talk to doctors, you talk to patients, so you
Exactly.
get it's never, and that is where you see this multiplicity of perspectives, which
Yes.
adds finally to, which I think is one of the things that your profession, that journalists are uniquely, you know that's a perspective that doesn't come from most other people who tend to be in one
Yeah.
job, tend to
Yes.
know about one thing
Yes.
because they
That's
develop a lot of specialized knowledge,
this is
whereas
what
you
I'm
get to
saying
see.
about about television. You can never get perspective. It's
Okay.
always one-sided. Is my feeling. Unless
Okay.
it's a developing story, then you give perspectives. But in
Okay.
print, you can do it. You can do justice to both the areas. Is what I'm thinking.
Okay. In your mind, where is the change happening in the profession, in your own life? How do you think things changed as you spent more years in it?
I'm I think during my time, or people of my seniority, we traveled to the place. Okay, we traveled to the place, touched the place, smelt it, and wrote stories. Now that is not a necessity, and I think
Okay.
that's criminal. That's criminal. You will never ever get the true aura of a story, never the truth, if you don't travel. You will never get what actually happened. We might have, we'll go there after the crime has happened, but you see the area, you wonder, you think, how did it happen? And you develop a story on that. That is no more a necessity, and I think that's really stepping backwards in time.
So how
That
is it handled now? The reporter doesn't actually, the travel is cut
you
down
can
to a
call.
level?
Pandemic especially helped. Pandemic helped,
Okay.
right? You just called people and said, what happened, tell us, and
Oh,
that's it. Yeah, which is such a
okay.
tragedy, really. Yeah.
So that's almost like building a story from hearsay. So
Yes.
anybody is,
Anyone can write. Anyone can write. You don't need to go there. You don't need to sniff the air and say, how did it happen? We had a very famous police officer who got shot at the junction of the city, and the Naxals escaped. Four of them, they'd escaped. Some of us went there and spent 3 days. How did it happen? How could it have happened? And then it all kind of fell into place. And again, just to say, the Naxals had done their homework. They'd done recce trips so often that they had it pat, right?
wow.
So this is what we tell the police, that the Naxals do their homework, you guys don't do, and we become enemies. We
Plus,
become
they have
enemies.
the advantage of surprise because they are planning.
Exactly. They planned it.
And
Precisely.
yeah, and they don't know, whereas the police would not know that this particular thing is happening
Exactly.
there.
Exactly.
You were in Hyderabad during, like you said, one of the changes that Chandrababu Naidu brought about was the way he modified what he said to a local journalist, or what he talked about on the national stage versus what he spoke on the regional stage. I think Hyderabad also focused on infrastructure because it was one of the cities where
Yes.
you
Yeah.
began to see a whole lot of change. Okay. So that's one of the things, right? All those little stories are like drops that add up to the overall picture of what is changing.
Absolutely. Clinton came. The top story when Clinton had come, he invited him to, inaugurate the place. Was Clinton got a license in two
Okay.
hours, right? Okay. We got him a license, and that was high tech, and we all wrote about it.
Okay.
But a few of us, it was that Clinton got his own vehicle, and it was a Humvee. So we all stood at the gate to see the Humvee go, and worshipfully, looked at the Humvee and like, oh, hopefully Clinton would look at us, wave to us, and say, come get in, I'll take you for a ride. Never happened. But these are the things. Babu
Okay.
introduced us to a world perspective. A lot of foreigners came. Bill Clinton came, and um, the Microsoft guy came. All these people came, and we could meet them, we could talk with them, and things turned dramatically, and
Okay.
suddenly Andhra was, Hyderabad especially, was at the center of things, and we got a lot of attention because of that. As journalists, we got a lot of attention, and nationally, it was no more South India; it was Hyderabad. That
Hmm.
helped.
Okay. So what was it like producing a magazine? You did it for almost 5 years, you said. At
Yes, yes. Body and beauty care. I worked, did a lot of good work. We came out with a magazine called Body Care, and
okay.
the editor didn't know a thing about what was happening anyway. She just brought it out. She said, "You'll have to produce it." I said, "With pleasure." And I had a couple of
Okay.
people to help, and I went and got the first copy right from the print,
Okay.
from the machine.
Okay.
It was a solid black cover, and I took it in my hand, and all the ink got stuck to my hand. But I loved it, the smell of ink, the first issue. It was, I mean, it was like having a new baby in your hands. It was
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
I can still smell the ink. Even in Times of India, then was letterpress. So you would go and stand with the guy and tell him, ye karo, wo karo. those are then those guys were so happy that the person was talking. And then we had the cut and paste in news time. So I grew from there to software where you can sit on the computer and change everything. You can edit it. It continued on page 3. There we'd have to stand and see that it is continued on page 3. Here you can see it on the
Right.
computer itself. So huge
Right.
improvement there. But of course, once you're a reporter, you're never looking at the desk. Then you become only a reporter.
So, since you were on the inside, what did you think were the changes that digital really brought about? So, you had this overnight thing. Newspapers you would read the next morning. Today, it's
Yes.
breaking news every 5 minutes. Uh, and it's almost as if by the time the newspaper comes out, all that news has already been discussed, tweeted,
Yes. Yes.
uh, you know. So, where do you think this whole profession or how newspapers are managing right now? Where do you think it's evolving towards?
But everyone's gone online also, Venu. In a week went
They have.
online. We've all
Okay.
gone, no, no. We used to have an online edition where
Okay.
we wrote every at 6 o'clock in the evening, whatever was happening during the day, we would have to report if it was
Okay.
very interesting. So we would have to rush to a point, get some story, come back and cover it. So that was also extremely exciting. And you also had to send them story ideas for online edition, which wouldn't get carried in the print because that took a week. So if there was something very interesting, you do it online. So
Okay.
we also experienced the immediacy of it, so to speak. We had to
Okay.
come before the newspaper, really. Week magazine, of
Right.
course, was a week old, but in this case, we had to come before Deccan Chronicle hit my, little basket out there. So
Right.
we had to do that. So that was also exciting, but it kind of really jolted you up because you really had to be so quick, so quick. Yeah.
So you've been on so many beats, political, beauty, Naxals.
Right.
How do you, out of these, which are the points that really stand out? Obviously, Chandrababu Naidu's interactions stand out because they were very, but from, let's say, some of the other stories, which are the ones that you still recall so many years later?
Naxalism, because I was among the first women. See, this is another thing. Because I was in Hyderabad, right? There were only three women reporters.
Oh,
I was one among them.
okay.
So it was a unique experience for us to go out there and get story. All of us were working for English papers, but it was different, and I learned the language on the job, and now I can speak very fluent Telugu. I learned it on the job, so it was an experience to go there and get a source, translate the thing, and get the work done. Uh, yeah, that's it. I mean,
Yeah. So when you're talking to people in their own language, what is it that you're looking for? Are you simply asking them questions based on what the incident is, or in your mind you're trying to get a feel of what their life is like so that that becomes the background texture of the story?
actually, I during my stint in week, I covered a lot of Naxalism. I covered a lot of Dalit experiences. Andhra was the hub of a lot of um, uh, you know negative acts against Dalits. And
Okay.
I had a very dear friend who was a Dalit reporter. And so
Okay.
it became, he kind of, we both helped one another. I could travel wherever I wanted. And he had all the experience and the information which we needed. So both of us would cover it. He'd cover for a newspaper and I'd write for week. So do I have to read that or will you read it?
No, you can read it. It's just one of the comments that has come in. So
Okay.
in StreamYard, you can get to see what is being said by the people who are watching. So PGS,
Okay.
who was my first guest
Uh-huh.
in the corporate, he talks to saying point of smelling the ground and the place.
Yeah.
So most managers have low or no touch with people at the grassroots, and I think that's a universal problem. That's
Yes.
something that, like you said, if it can be accomplished on a phone, then people think that, oh, it's fine. which
Yes,
I think is one of the problems of living in a virtual environment practically all the
absolutely.
time.
But I will pat myself very positively on that aspect. I
Okay.
was at the ground
You're
always,
completely at
and
the
my
thing.
grassroots contacts continue. They are alive,
Okay.
and
Okay.
I traveled Andhra Pradesh. I don't think any other person, any other reporter who was in Hyderabad has ever done so much. So
Okay.
I can say that with great pride. I have traveled a lot, extensively.
So, would you say that at some point your family was, I hate to use the word, accommodating? Your parents were, they didn't have a point of view on this, so they felt that.
In a way, yes. I didn't have children, so that was a huge huge
Okay.
advantage, because schooling and stuff like that was never a problem. I had my parents, and Amma was a bit sick for some time. But
Okay.
like I said, travel was easy because I cook and go, and I had a little help. And then my father stayed with me for long, and he fell ill only towards the end. And by which time I was not a working journal. I was not reporting as such. I was working. I
Okay.
was not reporting as such. So it helped. In my case, everything fell into place. Seriously, I mean, no complaints at all in that area.
Deepa has a question for you. So she says, "Does a being a woman, you can read it, make your perspective different? For example, when you meet Dalits."
Um, um, yes and no, because we are not looking at a Dalit problem from the woman's perspective at all.
Okay.
You look at it as a overall issue,
Okay.
and uh, because the more I think we are probably that much more sensitive, undeniably. But when you're really writing for a newspaper, that doesn't come across. It depends on how you present the problem, and probably my stories are slightly more human interest and more human value than a reporter's, definitely. But I do not know if that was because I was a woman, or just that I was more interested at the grassroots level with the issue. Therefore, right? See,
Okay.
a local reporter from that village covering that story would be entirely different from a person who's read a little bit more and goes there and covers the story. I think that is what brought in the impact.
Right. And that also changes to a large extent, uh, your approach. I think Deepa has a point in, if a man was covering that same story, he probably would meet the men, but not necessarily the women from within, because of the various social the things which are there,
No,
or that
in
doesn't
fact,
matter.
I was telling you, this person, we both helped one another. His stories,
Okay.
he's written a little book on that. His stories are superb in local language, sheer
Okay.
poetry.
Okay.
Unfortunately, our coverage could never be poetry because we were not allowed to write such long stories. But it
Okay.
was sheer poetry. He covered it also well. But there are
Okay.
certain issues, like when you cover nationalism, our perspective is entirely different from a male perspective. Definitely,
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely.
Okay. A question from Jayachandran here, which says, how did you manage your sources? I don't know if he's talking about locating a source, or you said you're still in touch with some of them. So what exactly, how
Yeah.
do sources get built? I think that's the larger question. And how do you manage them over a career?
See, basically, sources in politics is you kind of keep meeting, yeah. And
Okay.
here I will tell you, the brotherhood is very strong, extremely strong. So if a male journalist goes, arm goes across the shoulder, and hey, hey, they're cracking jokes and they're talking, and he's on the phone, they get immediate contact. We have to do that much more hard work. Even with
Okay.
a woman politician, we would have to do that much more hard work than a male politician, for
Okay.
some reason. Okay, I would like to say a lot, but not on this forum, as to why that happens. But
Okay.
woman has to work harder at developing her source politically, and whereas other business sources and all you might get, and you might be able to get one on one and talk to them, and doesn't matter. Police also, I managed to find a few very good sources, but very difficult for a woman to cross that barrier.
Breakthrough. Okay.
Yeah, cross that barrier. Very difficult, and
Okay.
it's a lot of hard work. I mean, real you have to do PR giri literally. Call them up. How's life? How are you? Can I come and visit you? So I was doing unnecessary visits out of town just to keep in touch with the police so that he would tell me. We did all this because it was Naxal times. Therefore, because I want to know immediate news about when something happens. Therefore, but otherwise, I suppose you call them up and speak with them and think that. I used to know every single, there were 13 districts. I used to know the SP of every single district.
Okay.
Every single district. I knew the SP, the DSP, the AC. You name them, I knew them. I had their numbers.
So you're
Yeah.
very well connected there. Okay, so
Extremely.
here's yeah. Is there a way to differentiate this, or this is really a personal judgment?
No, no, of course you could. You could. And Naxals, unfortunately, again, I use the word, they're no, no more on the ground. Um, but yeah, you could differentiate who was an Axel and who wasn't.
Okay. Okay.
Again,
It's quite
I had my team, which would, when we went to the genuine person.
okay.
Again, it took a
Okay.
lot of hard work, a lot of looking across over the shoulder, a lot of secrecy, a lot of phone calls. Don't call me now, call me later. Those days it was, dial your number. So
Yeah.
it was a lot of hard work. But we had our
But
sources, genuine sources.
okay. How did you manage the tensions? Because it was obviously not easy, especially the deadline of catching a story, or getting through to these people, getting them to trust you. Uh, Figuring out, there were points when maybe
Trust was not
did you
trust was
it's
never
not okay.
trust was never an issue, Venu. Trust was
Okay.
never an issue. But again, people are genuine when probably here being a woman helps. And
Okay.
invariably, by the way, when you go to rural, any place new, you take the local person with you.
Okay.
So your rapport with the local person is very important, and you have to
Okay.
build it up,
Okay.
and therefore it happened. But trust was never an issue.
Okay. Okay. And then, let's say, did you ever have a conflict about a story that you knew would be great to break, but you either were told that this is off the record, and I guess it must be happening very often. So,
Always,
yeah.
always,
So
always.
the best
Yeah,
news never gets published, or the most.
never. Yeah, leave it. We will find more details and then we will publish it always. And
Okay.
you work on it. You wait for the introduction to come, and you're spending hours on it. And you don't sleep the night, and you think you got a fantastic intro. The blighter will put it right at the end of the story. What you thought was a brilliant intro would come as a conclusion of the story. But that is the job of if the magazine has to look, you know, as the
Yeah.
magazine has to look. So that's the part of the desk job there.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So,
they
is there a tension between the desk and the reporters?
not really, not with the
Not
week magazine. And
really. Okay.
even when I was on the desk at news time, we never had issues. Never.
Okay.
Only thing is, the editor would of course check that the news was genuine. If it was breaking news, especially, so is the news genuine? Go check it out again and things like that. But
Okay.
by and large, the desk and they remain together.
Okay.
I mean, these days there might be conflicts. Those days there were not many conflicts. None.
So, what is the? I mean, if you were to describe the differences between, let's say, the right qualifications or the right temperament for being at the desk versus being a reporter, how would you divide the two?
The reporter always thinks he's cat's whiskers. You
Okay.
can't ever change that. Oh, he's like there. He'll walk in, sashay in, have his cigarette those days, cigarette, and and make a big thing and come and look at his story and say, why don't you change this? He thinks it's cat's whiskers. He, she,
Okay.
right? Whereas the desk person is like, it is the desk person's story which really appears in the magazine, in the newspaper, in the newspaper, probably not too much of a change because the person really is giving last minute. The English is changed, the grammar is changed. In a magazine, the entire story is polished. So it is really not your story. Your story is Your byline is carried, but it is that person who's polished that story, right? So there is a huge difference. And reporters think they're a class apart. They will not acknowledge the work a desk person puts. Whereas
Okay.
I think the
Okay.
desk person is like a diamond polisher. He brings the facets of the story perfectly.
Okay. And here's a question from Ravi. He's saying that meeting fellow, is there a spirit of competition, rivalry between publications because you're going after the same story, or that is something that is part of the job and everyone accepts it? Or
Yeah, if you're on a newspaper, you normally come to the press club after 11 p.m. when you put the story to bed, right? So you'd come and you order your drinks and you come and drink. So there is not much of rivalry there.
okay,
Unless you're a television person. Then these days at the press club, there is a lot of, there is breaking story. But again, I said there is a camaraderie. I mean, they would let you know that there's something is happening and
okay,
that there is a break in news. So it happens. Maybe the national versus local might have a bit of an issue, but the local journalists all get together and they work at it. Not an issue. Like I said, we all carry a common lead. I mean, you cannot carry another lead and get your, kind of,
okay.
yeah, can't do that.
So you said that you passed out in arts and then you thought you'd be a lecturer. Today there are journalism colleges, their courses. Do you think that has made a difference?
Well, there's the Asian College of Journalism. I think the
Yes.
Hindu does it.
Yeah.
Oh, they think they're cats, whiskers, whiskers. I mean, we are, and the people are given that kind of. It's like the IIM or the IIT.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the Asian School of Journalism is considered as that way. But ultimately, if you're on the desk, you're giving a headline. If you're a
Okay.
reporter, you're writing reports. I mean,
Okay.
maybe your English is slightly better than the rest, but
Okay.
if you really do not have your contacts, if you do not have your grassroots support, if you do not have enough happening around you, I mean, how does it matter, right? I would think,
Yeah.
but then I'm not from Asian School of Journalism, so I can afford to talk.
Yeah. It's so true that the degree is useful up to the first job. After that, it really depends on what you're doing.
Ultimately, it's your contact. If you want to
Nobody
be a
asks
good
you.
reporter, yes,
Yeah,
true,
exactly.
true, true.
It's like guys who go and do a course abroad in filmmaking and then come back and then say, okay, where did you assist? What did
Exactly.
you do?
Yes,
It's,
precisely.
yeah, it's
You
not
see
about.
so many more movies is about all, but yeah,
uh,
true, true, true.
so, did you have a mentor? Do you feel that it's important in a job to have a mentor?
In journalism, no,
In any profession, but you obviously are,
because
because into journalism, because you
no, in
feel that. Okay.
yeah, no, no, and you don't need a mentor.
Okay.
Or maybe depending. For example, I must tell you this little story. I joined a group called the Pandit Group of Publications. It brought out imprint. There
Okay.
are two things I will always feel bad in life, that I never worked for the imprint. I think it's one of the best magazines.
Yeah.
There's Caravan, which is again one of the
Right.
best produced magazine, and there's the Indian Express, which I think is the honest newspaper. I never worked in these three. Imprint, I actually applied to join the imprint, but they didn't have vacancy, and so therefore I joined their. They were coming out with a new magazine on sound and music and stuff like that. But there was Veer Sangvi, and there were like 8 girls, and they'll always be talking, and they'd always be talking, and that is the one time I was extremely envious that I was not part of a harem, right? I mean, like, I felt very bad, very, very bad. But yes, at that time, mentoring helped because they came out with some phenomenal stories,
Okay.
fantastic break stories, and they worked so much at it, and they were allowed a lot of freedom. The Week magazine also allowed. We all our editors were our mentors. I mean, we would discuss it with them and break the story and tell them these are the various aspects. They would help us through it.
So
But
how does I'm trying to understand what does the editor how does the editor help you refine a story? In the sense, does he or she change the emphasis? Do they change the order in which the story comes? Or does he say that certain aspects of this have not been covered? I'm
yeah,
just going a little.
they would. No, they would of course question us on a lot of aspects. Um,
Okay.
um, I mean, there's always this little fight. If you're writing a story from grassroots, they're asking you weird questions, right? Because they're sitting somewhere else and they're totally urban and they do not understand where it's coming from. So those kind of little clashes would happen, but by and large, the person who's editing your story is with you through the story, and the person understands you and would polish the story. And of course they would, like I said, change the introduction to conclusion and bring the conclusion as introduction. That is their privilege. So you would, but though there are one or two reporters from the Week magazine whose story was never touched,
Okay.
so that speaks a lot.
So, how would you file stories way back when communication was nowhere near as good as, especially when you
Oh,
were going into the
exciting.
remote
I
areas?
covered a story for I covered a story for Manorama through phone. By the way, I was also reporting for Malayalam Manorama. So they would
So,
break in
by phone, in the
newspaper
sense you were
stories.
literally dictating the story?
Dictating the
Okay.
story. There's somebody who would take it because we were in the wilderness and there was only one
Okay.
telephone available, and I couldn't send the story. But
Okay.
otherwise, we would send the story through the telegraph office. I
Okay.
can't even now
Okay.
think about it. Yeah, we would go there and type, and they would send it. But that happened only for a year or two before
Okay.
we kind of became slightly computer savvy. All the
Yeah.
people in the
Yeah.
Week magazine had a Mac, but I
Okay.
never got used
Okay.
to a Mac, so I was always
Yeah.
using Word.
No, and I'm saying that's the other part. Practically all the jobs we are talking about today,
Yeah.
advertising agencies used to send CDs by courier and all that stuff before it got
Yes.
into publications. Now,
Correct.
of course, but the
Yeah.
problem is also the client is doing it at the last possible minute approvals now, because
True.
you can just say publish and it goes, or it just,
And it goes exactly.
yeah.
You just need to
So
click on the
those things
yes.
are, yeah.
Yeah.
So, are there things that you miss about the early days of the profession, or do you think that most of the change has been for the good?
Yeah, it has been good because um, no, it has been good one, and I'm still traveling, so I'm not envious of anybody, and no one else is traveling, which is seriously the tragedy of the season, that no one is going out there to cover a story. Yeah, they're sitting here and writing. Of course, there are correspondents, but people are not traveling, which is really a big setback. And
So, from what you say, I think that's one of the things that people who are trying to enter the profession should be doing. Do a lot of travel into the interior areas, figure out
absolutely,
what life is like, figure out if
yes,
you like doing it, and then
yes,
figure out if you like discomfort. One of the
absolutely.
things is that we used to a lot of comfort these days. So, getting these stories obviously wasn't a comfortable exercise by any means, right?
Not at all. I once had to travel, climb a mountain, and you know I looked at the mountain and said, "Come on, yeah, Lalita, I can climb this." Oh, it was a bad experience, believe me. I huffed and puffed and gave my bag to somebody, my water bottle to somebody, and then I kind of, grabbed whatever was available and climbed up. Those are the kind of stories we did, and when it got published, you could see the sweat in it. You could see the
Okay.
work, in the I felt it. And
Okay.
when the local journalists or the local people say, "Oh, you went there and you did this," it was a nice
Yeah,
feeling.
and
Yes,
I think that's the point of authenticity,
yes,
because
yes,
you give details that
yes.
only if you're on site you could have made out.
That is what I'm saying.
There
That
is
is
no
what
way
I'm saying.
that somebody who sort of
Yeah.
had a distant
Yes, yes.
view would have actually been able
No
to.
way, no way. You cannot.
Okay.
That mountain experience, no one can tell it unless you travel it. Yeah, like that.
What about women in journalism? There are obviously a lot more today than when you started out, but do you think it's still skewed towards males, or do you think it's more or less kind of
No,
it's okay?
it's no more skewed. No more skewed.
Okay.
And women are right out there, absolutely out there. But like I said, uh, there is a here we need to divide between English newspapers and local regional newspapers. The locals will not allow so many women to come. The English newspapers have crossed that way beyond long back. So we've had a lot more women reporters who've been writing so many good stories, and they've been doing so much more. And Delhi, especially, way ahead. South kind of took some time, but Delhi and some of the other places, Bombay has been way ahead. But local journalism is still kind of a little tad
Yeah.
hesitant. Tad hesitant.
Okay. Wow, that's been quite a journey.
Yeah.
Thank you for. Where do you see this? You said you still travel, you still enjoy the whole process of, you know, uh, going out and looking at new things. What are your interests now? What are the things that you wish to do? Or what are the
I
things that hold your interest?
No, just about everything. I think currently, I'm still adjectivating, right? I write about food.
Okay.
I write about where I went, how I traveled. I write a little
Okay.
blog. So,
Okay.
I mean, people read it and they like it. And, some of them, I visit temples. So I'll write the journey to the temple. And
Okay.
many people, I realize appreciate the fact when I point it out where they can get good food and where they can find clean toilets. So that is
Very
a
important.
positive step.
No, those are always the little details that matter. It's one thing
Yes,
to say, I watched a lovely sunset, but the sunset
correct.
happens and then you have to go back to your hotel, find
Precisely.
food and all the other things which are there. Okay. Wonderful. So, just to kind of summarize, I think from the girl who won the debate competition and started out at the Times of India to a beauty magazine and then met so many doctors and practitioners there to Newsweek, I mean,
The
Inadu
beat.
Newsline. Yeah. And the multiplicity of characters that you've seen on every side of the fence, from the politicians to the stars to the naxals to the police. I think you've got to see a microcosm of the multiple perspectives that happen, which I think is unique to a journalist job.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's
it is.
one thing which I think is, in most other professions, you get to see it either from your point of view or from the other person's point of view. And if you have a large circle of friends, you might see a little more perspectives. But here
Yeah.
it's on the job.
Yes.
Okay. So, in conclusion, is there anything that you would like to tell young people who are looking at getting into this?
Don't say no to any assignment and
Okay.
work hard. Don't say no to any assignment. There is no
Okay.
small assignment. There is no large assignment. There is no, I
Okay.
will not cover women and child welfare. I'll only do. No. Every area, every subject has depths. We can always look for it. So don't say no to any subject. Just
Okay.
you're given an assignment, do it with your heart. And hard work pays always. Hard work
Wonderful.
pays. Yeah.
And you're an example of that. Lalita, yeah, thank you very much for the time that you've spent. I think it was really interesting to see how your journey started and how it continues. Here's wishing you continued writing and new explorations in future. Thank you for
Thank you.
being on the show.
Entirely
Thank you.
my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you
Bye.
very much.
Bye.